This painting of George Washington is likely a copy of a much more famous painting, but it still deserves our attention and respect. But in its current state, it's really kind of lousy. It's really, really dark and really, really dirty. There are some surface issues that compromise our ability to see the painting and not just the surface. But ultimately, it just looks drab, and for a man who was so important and had such an outsized footprint during his life, well, his portrait should do the same, even if it's small. We can see all of that discolored old varnish and surface grime on the painting, and we can also see that the surface is really textured, and this could be a combination of old varnish and surface grime that's just been built up over many years. And we know this painting has been conserved at least once in the past, so who knows what was done to this painting. But our job is to figure it out and undo it and put George Washington back together again. Now, before I can find out just how grand the problems are with this diminutive little painting, I need to start exploring. This painting is in a frame, and there's a backing board on the back, which is covering up, well, the painting. And I need to remove it. And I'll start by taking my pliers and pulling out these framers points. Now, framers points are basically little pieces of metal that are shot in to the frame with kind of a modified staple gun, and they hold the backing board in place. And as I remove this backing board, just a piece of cardboard, I can see the board to which this painting is adhered. And I try to get it out, but it's fighting me. Apparently it's been glued or adhered or somehow affixed in, but eventually I do break it loose, at least part of it. You can see that this board is not a perfect oval, and it's too small for this frame. So they've added little pieces of board afterwards to compensate for the gap that was visible when it was framed. All of this stuff needs to come off, and in order to protect the painting, I'm going to face it with my traditional fish gelatin and washi paper. Once the fish gelatin is heated up and melted, it is solid when it's in the refrigerator and cooled, I can find a piece of paper. And here I'm using a heavier weight paper than normal because I think it's going to help give some extra support onto this painting and also be easier to remove because it doesn't disintegrate as easily as the thin stuff. So after tearing it to fit and then aligning it on the face of the painting, I'll use a brush and some of this fish gelatin and bond it down in place. And I use fish gelatin as opposed to rabbit skin glue or hide glue because it has a lower tack. It's an adhesive, and so it will stick, but certainly not as much as a hide glue or even a rabbit skin glue. And now, over the course of a few hours, the glue dries and the paper becomes opaque, and we say goodbye to George Washington. At least for now. He'll be back later, after a journey. This painting is going to be removed from this board, but unfortunately I cannot remove the canvas from the board. The adhesive is unknown and unresponsive to any solvents or solutions that I've used in the past. So I have to remove the board from the painting. And in this case, it's just a compressed cardboard, multiple layers of recycled paper compressed into one thick board. And so using my scalpel and a myriad of other tools, I can slowly begin peeling back each layer. It's a tedious process, but for a small painting like this, it goes relatively quickly. One layer after another, the layers separate easily and reveal what's underneath. Once I've gotten it down fairly thin, I can use my scalpel to shave off the last layer and the piece of paper to which the canvas is adhered. And then I'm going to use some Laponite, which is a synthetic clay saturated with water. It basically gels water to remove this final layer of paper. Sometimes we use Laponite to soften adhesives. In this case, I'm optimistic, but, well, I know better. It's not a water-based adhesive.